When I was deciding what to study in college, I thought about the fact that I was always really into aircraft, and I thought I would aim to study aerospace engineering. But someone I spoke to advised me that mechanical engineering has more variety of career paths to go down, including potentially aerospace, so mechanical engineering can be a good one for the sake of versatility. Long story short, I took that advice, studied mechanical engineering, and 10 years later I've worked in the aerospace industry for several years. Although it's been a good experience overall, I now have a better understanding of the pros and cons of the field that I wish I could have thought about in the first place. Before we discuss my experience as a mechanical engineer in the aerospace industry, be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel to get insider information about engineering careers, how to get into them, and how to succeed in them. So because of what I had heard at first, I believed that there was a shortage of mechanical engineers and that it would be easy to get a job simply getting a mechanical engineering degree and without having any experiences or anything else to differentiate myself. This was likely true a few decades ago. So nowadays, there are fields that arguably have much greater shortages of workers than mechanical engineering. So for a while, software engineering was very hot, although that's probably not as true anymore as it was 5 or 10 years ago. But marketing, accounting, other business skills, stuff that every business needs. Because let's be real, not every business needs mechanical engineers or any type of engineer, because not every business is actually in a technical field where they're developing some kind of technology. But every business, no matter what product or service they're providing, needs these marketing skills and accounting skills, other types of business skills. And there's a shortage of skilled trade workers at the moment because, millennials, we were just too cool for them. We thought that if we went into the trades, we'd be looked down on and we wouldn't be the successful people who all went to college and got these fancy degrees. And that's just not true because the skilled trades are now in the shortage and they're the people who are making a lot of the money right now. And finally, of course, the medical field seems to always be in short supply of workers, and these workers are always highly needed. I think a lot of us have also seen that a lot of doctors tend to be people who are from outside the US, and that's largely because of our shortage of them, because it's easier for them to get visas in the US if there is shortage of medical workers, and that's their way to come here. So yeah, definitely think about supply and demand, because mechanical engineering is not as leveraged in supply and demand as it used to be, because just got a lot more people going into it nowadays. So doing solid research, supply and demand, it's important before going into it in order to assess its viability. And for mechanical engineers specifically, you may be in high demand if you differentiate yourself with the skills that employers need. So this would mean, namely, that if not only are you getting the classes done and getting good grades in them, but you're going above and beyond in the skills that the employers actually need. You're learning how to do well with CAD, with computer-aided design, with structural analysis, using finite element analysis tools, or other types of software that employers use to model structural phenomena, thermal phenomena, fluid phenomena, stuff that the employers actually need in the day-to-day. Even stuff like project management. A lot of companies utilize that even for more technically simple things in technically simple manufacturing processes and such. Just figure out the ways to differentiate yourself, show employers that you're able to actually solve their business problems that they'll have. So another thing that I wish I had known in the first place was about work-life balance, because work-life balance for mechanical engineers really depends a lot on the role and the company that you're working for. So typically, if you have desk type of work like design and development or analysis where you're doing it just on a computer for something that's going to be built in the future, standard hours like Mondays through Fridays are going to be pretty typical for those kinds of jobs. While if you work in manufacturing or testing of products or of assemblies and large vehicles and such, then It's going to be more likely that you're going to have non-standard shifts because that kind of thing will more commonly be 24/7 or at the very least is going to run late at night and such. So keep that in mind. I mean, one of the pros to that is just the fact that you're not sitting at a desk all day. But something to keep in mind is that you're more likely to have more non-standard shifts and have a harder time with work-life balance. And some companies, like SpaceX, expect employees to work longer hours than typical. Thankfully, I have not worked for any employers that expected long hours, expected you to give everything to the company. Thankfully, I just haven't dealt with that, but keep in mind certain companies, some of these high-profile ones like SpaceX, that are probably going to expect that. And I enjoy doing structural analysis in large part for this reason. Typically standard hours with some exceptions and mostly desk work. So that's some of the pros and cons, but I definitely find it to be interesting work and worth it for that reason and for the work-life balance that I have experienced. And so let's talk about career flexibility, because that's also something I haven't thought about or didn't think about early on when I was going into engineering. Because in many cases, it can be easy to get pigeonholed into an industry or a specific technical discipline. So if you think about something like aircraft propulsion or powertrain for vehicles or utility systems, you're going very deep into technicalities of those things. Especially if you do that for like the first 10 years of your career, then you're going to start branding yourself in that particular thing. And that's what employers are going to see you as, depending on how specific it is. And because early in your career, it's easy to switch disciplines and skill sets and stuff. So that's where like it could be good to get a little bit of a variety of experiences to show your versatility and stuff. Because especially like, so if we take aircraft propulsion as an example, like that's just such a niche skill set, and it's only needed by one industry, and specifically by one part of one industry, that's the ones that make aircrafts. So it's going to be kind of difficult if that's what you've done your entire career. How do you have other opportunities if needed or if desired? It may be the kind of thing where the fluid systems involved in aircraft propulsion or controls used for propulsion systems that could be applied to other industries. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but maybe possible, but something to think about. So another thing that I ideally would have thought about before going into mechanical engineering is actually digging deep into numbers of what the pay actually is versus the cost of living. So when I first started mechanical engineering school, they told us that the average starting pay was $65,000. And that is the highest I had seen of any bachelor's degree. That someone told us about what the average was for those graduates. But when you haven't lived on your own before or using your own money to cover your cost of living, it's difficult to put into perspective what this number really means, because you're not used to actually dealing with prices and how they compare to what you see coming into your bank account. So especially nowadays, frugality and hard work climbing the corporate ladder will be required still in order to afford a middle-class lifestyle, per se, because we've seen how home prices have gone out of control. In my area, they've gone to pretty much over $500,000 for a home, and inflation of other prices of things, gas prices lately. I'm recording this in 2025, and gas prices have gone out of control lately, and a lot of just dining out and groceries, and we've seen increases in our bills for a lot of things. We'll see if that ends up changing, or if at the very least salaries start to increase. But for now, yeah, we're seeing just a lot of inflation compared to the current cost of living. And student loans, similar situation. Personally, I lived at home for most of college and managed to get out debt-free, so I was fortunate in that sense. But for a lot of people who have 10, 20, 30, or even more than that, $30,000 a year and $30,000 in student loans, like that's going to really eat at your ability to be able to afford the cost of living and save up for a house, save for retirement, etc., etc. And then the types of tasks performed was another thing that I wish I had known before going into mechanical engineering, because depending on the industry and discipline, tasks can sometimes be pretty mundane or more administrative than technical, or in some cases they seem unrelated to engineering. I started off in a quality control position in a metallurgical foundry, and I really felt like I wasn't utilizing engineering skills, which honestly I wasn't. I found what we were doing quite mundane and tedious, and my mind wasn't occupied during the day. I was doing a lot of just basic measurements of things, audits of processes to make sure they were following what was in the procedure, and tracking of different products going through the assembly line and such. And I was hearing my coworkers say similar things, that it doesn't seem like our skills are really being utilized, and heard stories from other people having similar experiences. And in some cases, it's areas of design that have more government regulation, so you're using a lot more of just predetermined stuff, and companies recycling a lot of what was used in the past in order to save money. So keep in mind, like, it's not going to be always as technical, and depending on the role, like, it might be pretty mundane, or depending on the role, it might also be pretty technical, and maybe that's what you want to go for, or you want to go more for the soft skill stuff. So good to just understand what types of tasks are performed in different roles. And the more technical jobs that consistently utilize engineering skills are often deep in topics that were electives in engineering school. So manufacturing processes, which I remember taking an elective in, as well as I took an elective in thermodynamics, which is pretty applicable to things like propulsion for aircraft and power systems at power plants and such. And fluid mechanics is also an elective in my experience. And the one thing also that I would really emphasize here, things like CAD and FEA for design and analysis, that really weren't studied in that much depth in the required classes. And these are extremely practical for the more technical types of jobs. So if this is what you're aiming for, definitely do what you can to become good at these things and understand how to actually utilize them for things that companies would need, because it's definitely important. And then one other thing that I wish I had thought about more before going into mechanical engineering was flexibility of location and the locations of where jobs would be. And at the time of writing, remote jobs in most engineering fields are quite scarce. Some highly specialized and skilled niches are going to have a little bit more of that kind of thing. So not too much flexibility in being able to do work at home or on the beach, or go to whichever other state or whichever other country for 2 weeks, especially in some industries if you wanted to. It's just you're going to have to really stand out in order to get those few jobs that allow for those kinds of things. And a lot of jobs will be in specific locations. Certain cities are more the aerospace hub cities, or also the tech hub cities that most of the jobs are going to be in. And then manufacturing plants, where going to be in certain parts of town, sometimes undesirable parts of certain cities. And depending on what you're manufacturing, it may be specific cities in general. Or if you're doing something like oil and natural gas, oil rigs are all in very specific areas. So choosing a discipline that such as construction, may provide you more location versatility if you want more flexibility with location, because there's construction pretty much everywhere nowadays. Or there may be other things that have more versatility to them, like certain types of manufacturing, or just basic manufacturing of slabs of steel and stuff that might be kind of versatile in various places. So be sure to do your research about what kinds of jobs are where and whether or not it's the kinds of locations you would be willing to go to and would have a good work-life balance and lifestyle in. So my recommendations overall: do your research on different industries that hire mechanical engineers, look at job descriptions for what skills are needed for those jobs. While in college, not after, but while you're there, go in depth onto topics that both interest you and are widely needed in multiple industries. So design and analysis are needed in multiple industries. Project management is a huge one that different industries need and is very versatile, especially if you ended up changing careers later. Like, that's going to be really helpful. Manufacturing processes are needed in a lot of different industries. And have backup plans for high demand careers that you may be interested that are unrelated to engineering. Like the medical field, if you were to move on, go to medical school or PA school or something, or things like tech sales or B2B sales, which definitely is not for everyone, but it's definitely a high paying job that a lot of people could get into if they develop the right skill set. Or skilled trades, like I've mentioned before, that there's a pretty significant shortage of. And I know it can be difficult to let go of the fact that you've put all this work into getting this engineering degree, and then if you're just not going to utilize it for engineering skills, like the sunk cost fallacy, it's a little bit challenging, but because depending on the situation, it just may not work out, having these backup plans is important. And the strong technical problem-solving skills that you do get in engineering might really help you with all these things, even with like tech sales, being able to speak technical languages and stuff. That's going to be definitely helpful for that. And think about just what's going to be most important to you in a career long term. Do you really value work-life balance, being able to savor your free time in those nights and weekends? Or do you really want a specific location or location flexibility? Or do you want high pay or the cost of the lifestyle that you want? Is that going to cost a certain amount? Just think about what's important to you and do your research on these careers to see if these careers are going to get you the lifestyle you want, both in what the pay actually is, but as well as what hours and what location and such you'll be working in. Because that's going to impact everything, not just about pay or about how many jobs there are, but about what kind of lifestyle you're going to have and whether or not this is the kind of lifestyle you're going to enjoy. Alright, that's what we've got for today. Be sure to tune in and hit the like button and the subscribe button. Provide any comments you have or questions you have about any of these concerns and things to consider before going into an engineering career. And stay tuned for future videos. Peace out.